of the capital, Buenos Aires, the stage for Eva Perón. Argentine sport has given the world such characters as Guillermo Vilas, Diego Maradona, and Juan Manuel Fangio. Today, it will crown a new hero at the Grand Prix of Argentina. Welcome to South America and the land of the Gauchos, home to the Formula One Grand Prix of Argentina. Hello again, everyone. I'm Bob Varsha. Formula One retains its Latin flavor, our second straight weekend south of the border. This time it is Buenos Aires and the circuit Oscar Alfredo Galvez in the heart of Buenos Aires. Damon Hill comes into this race undefeated through two events of the 1996 season. You just caught a glimpse of the past and the future of the race here in Buenos Aires. With me once again this weekend, Derek Bell. Derek, this is a circuit where horsepower is not quite as big a factor as it has been recently. How do you fancy Damon's chances on this racetrack?
Well, I think he's certainly going to have his work cut out. You've seen Schumacher's a wonderful shot here of Schumacher in qualifying yesterday, really giving this car everything he can, really dominating qualifying in my opinion. His verve, his enthusiasm is outrageous, and you see him sliding the car through the turns, something I've not seen in Formula One for a long time. As he turns in this corner, look at that bit of lock he's getting in there. The kick as the car snakes, tail goes out. They do have an oversteer problem, as we can see.
But they have been very close. Schumacher in particular has put his car on the front row alongside his great rival Damon Hill, who is the defending champion at the Grand Prix of Argentina. This is the second year for Formula One on this circuit, set in a park at a lakeside in Buenos Aires. There you see Eddie Irvine being belted into his #2 Ferrari. He has not been as brilliant as his teammate this weekend.
No, he certainly hasn't had a good time at all. And of course, in warm-up this morning, he had quite a problem with electrics. So he's not a happy guy at all. Eddie didn't go terribly well last week, and he's not doing well this either.
James Allen will once again be in the pit lane, and earlier this weekend he had a chance to talk with a man who has become known as the Other Mika, one of the unknown stars of Formula One, if you will, Mika Salo. Here's James.
Only 3 drivers have finished the first 2 Grand Prix of 1996 in the points. Damon Hill, of course, has won both of them, Mika Hakkinen and Mika Salo. In fact, Mika Salo has finished all of the last 9 Grand Prix, 5 of them in the points.
Yeah, last year's car was very reliable, but it was unfortunately very slow. And this year we have a fast car and it's still reliable, so it's very, very good.
Now this year you're using that new Yamaha engine. It's very light, very small. What kind of advantage is that giving you?
It's very light, like you said, and it's very drivable. It's very easy to drive because it's not like an on-off switch like last year's engine. It's from low RPM up to very top. It's all the way same power, and it's very drivable.
Now you brought your steering wheel here. Show us a little bit about how this works.
I don't know what's the difference from other cars because I've never driven another one. So, but I guess everybody has an upshift here, like we have. There's a pedal for downshift here as well. But I think the difference what we have for other cars is I keep pushing this, it goes down to third and it won't go anywhere else. It will end up third gear always. And this one is down to second. So it helps me down the braking. I don't have to play with the pedals and it will always end up in a certain gear. But we can program whatever gear I want.
Now I noticed you've got one here that says clutch. What's that all about?
That's for starts and for pit stops and like that. So it's just quicker.
So it actually functions just like the clutch. You push with your left foot.
I keep it pushed and it's open when I come off the button, the clutch comes up.
So presumably when you spin, that must be a tremendous advantage. All you got to do is put your finger on there. It stops you from going out the race.
Well, actually, when you're spinning, there's no time to play anything with your hands, so then I use a foot clutch.
Well, thanks very much, Mika. Mika Salo there, living proof that to score points in Formula One racing, you've got to finish.
All right, thank you, James. The extraordinary technology of Formula One, very much a hand-operated series as far as the drivers are concerned. It's going to be a difficult day for Mika Salo to keep his streak of consecutive finishes alive. This racetrack is bumpy, slippery, and diabolical, but fortunately, unlike last year, it appears that it will be a bright, sunny day. We'll be back with the starting lineup in just a moment. Welcome back to Buenos Aires, Argentina. Winter is not far away, but it is a beautiful afternoon at the Autódromo Oscar Alfredo Galvez. I'm Bob Varsha along with Derek Bell. We're moments from the start of this race. Here's a look at the starting lineup for today's race. On the pole, his second pole in a row, Damon Hill, defending winner of this race for Williams-Renault. Next to him, Michael Schumacher in the Ferrari. They have been spectacular all weekend. Row 2, Jacques Villeneuve, the highest qualifying rookie in the field for Williams. Next to him, Jean Alesi, whose crew worked all night on the car. Paid off. He is quickest in the warm-up. Row 3, Gerhard Berger, his best qualifying performance thus far for Benetton. Next to him, Rubens Barrichello in the Jordan, complaining of a lack of grip. On row 4, Jos Verstappen in the footwear cart, and the McLaren of Mika Hakkinen. On row 5, David Coulthard, last year's pole sitter, well back in the McLaren, next to the Ferrari of Eddie Irvine, who had electrical problems in the warm-up, got only 3 laps in. On row 6, Heinz-Harald Frentzen in the Sauber and the Ligier of Olivier Panis. Row 7, Ukio Katayama in the Tyrrell and the Minardi of Tarso Marquez. On row 8, Martin Brundle in the Jordan Peugeot, complaining of oversteer, oversteer, oversteer. Next to him, the man you saw a moment ago, Mika Salo in the Tyrrell. Row 9, Johnny Herbert in the Sauber Ford and the Ligier of Pedro Diniz. On row 10, Pedro Lamy in the Minardi and Ricardo Rossetto Brazil in the footwork. And on row 11, Luca Badois and Andrea Montermini in the 40s. Once again this week, no victims of the 107% rule. The quickest cars in the warm-up, Alesi and Berger, a 1-2 for Benetton with full tanks and race tires. Michael Schumacher third by 1/10 of a second, then Damon Hill 7/10 of a second back, and Jacques Villeneuve 1.1 seconds back. Let's talk a little bit about the racetrack as the field prepares to roll off, Derek.
Well, he's gone, this beautiful Buenos Aires circuit has gone from being a very fast circuit to a very slow circuit. In the 2.64 miles, there are in fact 18 corners, 7 of which are taken in second gear, and 4 are below 50 miles an hour. So it just shows you how much braking and how much traction you're going to need with these cars to get them out of the corners. Of course, where there are bumps coming into numero uno along the pit straight, and of course the worst bumps are under braking into the Ascari curve.
Now, the interesting thing about the warm-up this morning, Derek, was that the cars, at least the front runners, were actually quicker than qualifying.
And I think the reason for that, Bob, is today there's no wind. There's zero wind at all, which means there's no sand on the track, and of course, therefore, there's no buffeting of the car. As you make a turn into a corner, there's no crosswind to actually upset you. And there, of course, is Mr. Eccleston surveying the scene.
Let's take a look at the weather conditions. Temperature, a nice 72 degrees. Track temperature, about 86. They've been complaining about getting heat into these soft C-compound Goodyears. As you see, very low humidity, which is interesting since we are so close to the South Atlantic Ocean. Winds virtually non-existent. Yesterday they were gusting to 30 miles an hour, and the McLaren drivers in particular were complaining that it was affecting their turn-in. Chance of rain negligible, and that is great news. A year ago it rained on this race, and this track, slippery in the best of times, is absolutely diabolical in the wet. There you see the field making its way around. The track very bumpy. The drivers complained loudly. Friday night they brought out a laser-guided highway skimmer to try to shave down some of those bumps. They met with middling success. Those on the fastest part of the racetrack going into the Fangio corner is still very big.
Yes, I'm sorry to interrupt. Unfortunately, they're not actually, the bumps aren't in the corner. So it's not upsetting the cars that much. It's basically under braking and on the turn-in point. And it amazes me that they can build this new surface on great portions of the track since last year, yet they still make it bumpy. It amazes me with all the technology these days, they can't make it smooth as a baby's bottom.
Entire field of 22 making its way around. As you see, Williams-Renault, tremendous success, the dominant team in Formula One, 16 of the last 21 poles, winners of 7 of those races.
It's interesting to note that, of course, people are saying, possibly watching this program, why are those cars weaving around? They're weaving around to warm their tires up. The big problem here is, although it's 86 degrees, the surface is very difficult and obviously isn't very abrasive and doesn't get the tire temperatures up very quickly. So they're trying to get as much temperature as they can in on their warming up lap.
This is the 14th anniversary of the sinking of the Argentine battleship Belgrano during the Falklands War with Great Britain. Ironically, the man who was watching over the safety aspects of this race for the FIA, his name is Roger Lane Knott, a former commander in the Royal Navy who sat offshore submerged in a British nuclear submarine throughout that war. I wonder if anybody here in Argentina is aware of that.
Certainly not wearing his suit today.
The last 2 cars in line, the bright yellow Forties. Once they are there, the start procedure is in effect. Turn it up. Bad start for Villeneuve. Gerhard Berger comes around from behind him. Excuse me, Derek.
Sorry. Yes, look at Schumacher's really having to go at Hill, but Schumacher needs to be in the lead here. He's got a lazy and Berger right up behind him, but Hill's managed to keep that lead, and boy, that is what he needs on these opening laps, because if Schumacher's in front of him, my goodness, he's got a problem.
One of the Forties made a bid for a couple of rows at the first corner. Very tight and twisty through here. Easy, gentlemen.
As we ride with Mika Hakkinen in about the 8th spot there. A little bit of a break there. There's a gap between, oh, there's Irvine, quite well back in the pack. Obviously not at all confident to let it all go yet.
Horrible start for Pedro Diniz, who dropped well back. One of the Forties made its way up about 4 or 5 places. One of the big overnight topics of discussion was, would Michael Schumacher make a bid for the first corner and attempt to intimidate Damon Hill? If he did, it didn't work.
It didn't work. He really needed to be in front. It would have been awful for Damon if he really had to face Schumacher in front of him. Damon just cannot get away from this man, this great driver. Damon's a great driver, but Schumacher there in a car that obviously is not up to par. Heaven help poor old Damon when they get the car up to par after some testing back in Europe. And Schumacher's not losing much to Damon here. You can see him catching up under braking. People are also saying, can Schumacher keep this pace up? Can he really throw the car around like this for the whole 2 hours? My feeling is he can. I haven't taken a side bet with Bob, but I reckon he can. He's super fit, and he's just got the bit between his teeth, and he's going for it.
I might have taken that bet. I'm not sure the Ferrari will hold up. You saw the cars diving through those S's. Well, diving, of course, being a relative term. That is about the only elevation change on this racetrack. It is quite flat. We should also point out that Derek Bell won his very first Sports Car World Championship event at this circuit, albeit in a very different layout back in
71, yeah, in the Porsche 917. My first ever sports car race for Porsche and my first victory in the Buenos Aires 1000 Ks. The circuit was a little different then, super fast without all these Mickey Mouse second gear corners, but oh, it was a great race. Funny enough, driving in the other car was Jackie Oliver, who of course was the head of Arrows. Now, of course, probably just one of the guys that's working in collaboration with Tom Walkinshaw at Arrows.
Tom Walkinshaw has not only confirmed the sale, or the purchase, that is, of a controlling interest in the Arrows team. It's been announced this weekend that his contract to be technical director of the Ligier team, which was to have gone to mid-season in July, will terminate as of this race. So Tom Walkinshaw wasting no time getting his hands on the controls at Arrows. He'll be taking a lot of Ligier's engineering staff with him.
look at those first 4 cars. They're absolutely nose to tail. Again, you see Schumacher whistling up behind Hill here, getting the power. The car is obviously very good on braking, and we know the Ferrari's good on turning. The problem is they can't keep the tail on the road. This is something they'll be working on with the 1996 rear suspension, which they haven't got on the car at this time. But they're actually braking away, and as yet we haven't seen too much of where Gilles Villeneuve has got obviously blocked out. I think Häkkinen's leading the second group, and he's got held up behind them a little bit, which won't be doing Jacques any favours. He won't be too happy with that, because we saw how well he went in Melbourne.
Suddenly the Benetton Renault team is looking so strong. The first 2 races of the year, the drivers complained they weren't getting the Renault power from behind their backs. Renault engineers were saying the drivers' helmets were blocking the airboxes. There you see Jean Alesi well down below the revised opening in that airbox, but the team says it's going to take a major redesign and reconstruction of those cars to get the drivers down low enough in the cockpit to get full power, something in the area of 750 to 800 horsepower from those Renault V10s. And as you see, we have a 4-car breakaway up front. Damon Hill over the bumps and into the Fangio corner. Schumacher, Alesi, and Berger. Then a gap back to David Coulthard. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Oscar Alfredo Galvez circuit in Buenos Aires, named for an occasional visitor to Formula One, but actually a superstar in the highly exotic and highly dangerous open road races of the middle part of this century here in Argentina. Actually, the circuit was named October 17th Autódromo, named for the 1945 revolution that brought Juan Perón to power. There's Damon Hill. He is in the lead, the dominant figure in Formula One thus far this year. There is Gerhard Berger, who's had such a difficult time adjusting to the Benetton, having come over from Ferrari last year. 3 big crashes in the offseason in last year's car, which he said was basically undrivable for him. And while Jean Alesi absolutely loved the car, both drivers more comfortable with the 1996 machinery. Now it appears they are really coming up to speed.
Yeah, they're really enjoying it now. Gerhard's much happier this weekend, and it's great to see them both so close. Obviously, they're not going to get too involved with the Schumacher-Hill situation at this time. It's a mighty long way to go. You can obviously always also destroy the tyres, and it's going to be interesting to see just how they work the tyre and fuel tactics out. There's a big gap down now to Coulthard, who's in 5th place. I mean, that is a long way down. You can see the cutting of the surface there, where they actually dug out the track to try and get rid of those bumps with the machinery the other night. But the worst bit, as I say, is on the back part coming down to the Ascari curve. Hill with Schumacher all over him. It's interesting to note just now, we watched some in-car stuff with Hill. You notice how little kickback there is through the steering wheel. That just shows how well they've got this Williams car set up, how well they've got the shocks organised and the springs organised so that the car rides so beautifully over the bumps. Whereas Schumacher here is really holding on for dear life. He's not only adjusting the car, he's actually trying to control it because it's trying to get away from him.
All for those white patches, the repaired part of the racetrack. Notice on the steering wheel, well, you won't see it now, but when they reach the shift point, there are lights on the steering wheel to remind the driver that it's time to shift. For optimum RPM, performance from the engine. Schumacher hanging on with Hill.
Hanging on's the word. Slipping away a little bit there from Alesi, but Berger's close behind. But it'll be interesting to see just what the gap is, in fact, to 5th place, which we're losing out at this moment, because somewhere in there is young Villeneuve, who would love to be past Barrichello and, of course, Coulthard, to see what he can do about chasing somebody in front.
This is one of the highest downforce circuits of the season because of the slippery nature of the track. They use downforce not unlike that for Monaco or perhaps Hungary. As a result, the top speeds are not mind-boggling, but it is an awful lot of work, very hard on fuel consumption, on tires, on brakes, and on gearboxes. Speaking of which, the Ferraris are still operating with the 1995 gearboxes and transaxles grafted onto the back of that car until they can get the 1996 version made entirely out of titanium. Very slim, very low line, very lightweight. But it has been cracking until they get to the next event, opening the European round of the championship at the Grand Prix of Europe at the Nürburgring. They are working with last year's transmissions and rear ends, and they are a bit wider than the 1996 version, so it is a compromise not only mechanically, but in terms of aerodynamics.
You could see the severe bump coming to that previous turn. You saw both the cars really jar, and Villeneuve said many times this weekend just how the shock is so severe that it almost shuts your eyesight off as you go over them. The advantage is, of course, that if these cars will stand up to the thrashing they're getting on this sort of pavement, as they did last week in Brazil, the British or the European circuits, which are so much smoother, like billiard tables relatively, of course, we're going to have no unreliability problem, of course.
I wonder what all that fluid was on the onboard camera. I wonder if Damon Hill's car is spewing anything.
Well, strange enough, about 2 laps ago, I noticed a little bit of vapor from the back of the car, but I thought, well, maybe it's just early times. You know, when they've got full tanks, they get the breathers breathing very heavily, fuel out, and although 6 laps into the race, we shouldn't have that problem, but who knows? There's a lot of action in that engine, a lot of heat to dissipate, and you've got to admit, Schumacher is fairly close through
very close. In fact, well, I thought there might have been a lunge down the inside coming right there. Gerhard Berger has just set fast lap. We are set for 72 laps of racing. We're working lap number 7. Jacques Villeneuve, by the way, dropped back to 9th at the start. Absolutely horrible start for Villeneuve. He is now up to 6th, as you just saw, and we'll see again right now.
This is such a contrast to last week's race when dear old Hill, all he had to do was keep it on the road, do the perfect job that he did, probably the best drive I've ever seen him do, and of course he pulled away from everybody. But at this time, not today. See that bump there? They really severely bumped coming into that turn. That is at the end of the Ascari straight, or should I say coming to the Ascari curve on the back straight. Very, very vicious indeed, and something they've got to fix if they ever want to hold a Grand Prix here again, in my opinion.
And I just realized I've been calling it the Fangio corner again. It is Ascari. I'll never get that through my head.
That's all right.
Last year, Frank Williams said Damon Hill was a terrific qualifier, but the one quality he lacked was the aggression in the races that would put him on level terms with Michael Schumacher. It appears it is a new Damon Hill this year. We'll be back. We are back live at the Grand Prix of Argentina, 3rd round of 16 in the 1996 Formula One World Championship. You ride with Michael Schumacher, race leader Damon Hill up ahead in the Williams. Behind him, Jean Alesi in the Benetton. And there you see the gap from Gerhard Berger in a very close 4th back to the 5th place car. Now here a moment ago is what happened to Mika Salo, one of the very tight right-handers.
Yeah, he got it away. As soon as they get sideways, they lose it. But the interesting fact is, of course, that although he has a clutch pedal, they've got to have the presence of mind to flick in the clutch pedal and try and get down to the right gear while they're trying to control the car spinning. And of course, they lose the engine, they can't restart it, and so they're out of the race. And that is sad, because you don't need to lose cars from a race. It's tight enough as it is. That is very good shot there of Coulthard with Villeneuve right behind him, and obviously, they've changed positions. Villeneuve has obviously got by Coulthard, and now we'll see how young Jacques makes it up and see if we can catch up with the group in front. But of course, they were 12 seconds behind. So it'll be interesting to see just how he can make up that 12 seconds and come up on Berger.
How dominant has Williams-Renault been this year, driven by by Damon Hill and Jacques Villeneuve. As you watch a replay of Villeneuve going down the inside of Coulthard, they have led virtually all of the laps thus far this season, with the exception of 3. Damon Hill remains the leader, looking for the hat trick of 3 successive victories. He has done it before. In fact, in his maiden-breaking season with the Williams-Renault team, partnering Alain Prost, he won 3 straight races.
But it's going to be difficult for him. He's got a lot of competition this weekend. Alesi is really on song. So much is going to depend on the pit strategy. You can see here, Alesi's probably just over a second behind Schumacher. They're going to settle into a bit of a groove. I mean, it's very evident that Schumacher can't get by Hill, and of course Alesi can't do that to Schumacher either. So consequently, they're going to sit there for a while until they get themselves into good shape.
Look at the skyline of downtown Buenos Aires in the background. Here's another look at Villeneuve's move on Coulthard.
Yeah, Coulthard went out very wide to get the correct line into turn 1 over that bump there. Probably upset him a little bit, and of course young Jacques was through on the inside like a knife through butter.
Right aboard a Benetton. Patrick Head said something interesting about Villeneuve. Said he is completely unfettered by conventional thinking, as they pound across those bumps again, conventional thinking about car setup. In fact, he says the IndyCar influence is such that he really takes an open mind towards a Formula One car. In fact, in IndyCar, he said it wasn't unusual for them to put 4 different setups on the 4 different corners of the car. Patrick Head said, we've had to do a little rethinking of our own to catch up with Villeneuve on that score.
Yeah, they did some of it when they were testing in Spain earlier this year. In fact, he often had a different spring on each corner of the car, which is mighty sensitive thinking. But you couldn't do that without the technology that they have these days and the feedback when they go and sit in their motorhomes afterwards and actually download all the information. You couldn't do it just by feel, in my opinion, anyway.
As you see there, Rubens Barrichello and Jos Verstappen very close together. Verstappen back to Mika Hakkinen in 9th. Hakkinen a little bit off song. His teammate David Coulthard leads him in the race.
Yes, one doesn't know why. They had a bit of problem with his car this morning in warm-up, so maybe it's a recurrence of that. He had a bit of the valve gear problems that they had, pneumatic valve gears, so maybe it's something to do with that. I wouldn't have thought so, but you just never know. He might prefer the setup on his race car to the training car and didn't want to take the chance of going out on the spare car.
There are the top 6 in points, including ties, and where they are running presently in the race. Damon Hill right out front. Michael Schumacher dropping back into the clutches of Jean Alesi, who runs 3rd. Villeneuve, 2nd in points, 5th on the racetrack, but he has 15 seconds at this point behind Gerhard Berger in 4th, so he has a lot of ground to make up. Here comes Berger at the back of the screen.
Yes, there's a long way for young Jacques to make up, but at least he's got an open track in front of him, and still they start lapping the slower traffic. But that is great for him. He can really get his teeth into it, something he hasn't really been able to do since he left Melbourne. And he's got nobody chasing him behind in reality, because he just got by Coulthard. Hakkinen is languishing back there, but of course, as I say, many things could be happening for him, and he may well, there's only 0.7 of a second between him and the car in front. 0.7 of a second is nothing, and if he hasn't got the extra guts to get through, I mean, sheer power-wise, he's not going to be able to get through, so he has to sit there until the break comes, and we saw the sort of breaks you need, as we saw Villeneuve nipped by Coulthard just momentarily. Alesi is actually catching a little bit up on Schumacher there. Can't help but think Schumacher's verve and his thrill of throwing that car around has to take it out on the tyres, and I think we may well see a lot of tyre changes on the Ferraris. Although they're not getting great temperatures, I think they're going to actually wear them out much quicker than one imagines.
On the front wing there, that is on the turning vane of the Benetton, you notice that bright green Hype logo. Hype is a so-called energy drink that was on the Arrows cars earlier this year, but that's all changed.
Yes, it was quite interesting. I bumped into the gentleman from Hype, an Englishman, who actually brought the sponsorship. He had the shirt on. I said, "What are you wearing that shirt for?" And he said, we did have sponsorship on the Arrows team. But he said as soon as Walkinshaw bought it, he said Walkinshaw brought more money with him, bigger sponsors, and so Hype became too small a fry, and so consequently we lost our deal. And he said, but I do have a meeting any moment now at all with Flavio Briatore. And as we see, whoops, Alesi got out a little bit wide just there. Boy, he did get out wide. He gathered it up together. Anyway, you can see it's now on the Benetton car. So obviously Mr. Briatore took the dollars.
Wasn't that an interesting financial flip-flop from low buck Arrows to big buck Benetton simply because they got bumped off the Arrows car? We'll be back live in a moment. Martin Brodeur in the nets for the Devils here on the Deuce. Meanwhile, back in Argentina, the race continues. Gerhard Berger getting the Benetton sideways. There's his teammate Jean Alesi, who leads him on the racetrack. And Alesi beginning to lose ground to second place Michael Schumacher, who in turn is losing ground to the leader Damon Hill. Now, a moment ago, here's what happened to Jos Verstappen, who had gotten around Eddie Irvine in the Ferrari for 10th, but he took it off and lost the position back.
They do have a good runoff there, and it's going to be interesting to see if he gets back on the trap again. One assume he does, because we haven't seen anything to the contrary. But he sort of had a moment trying to get by the Jordan, it looked like, and then missed out on it totally.
There's David Coulthard, the Scotsman who sat on pole for this race a year ago, led it briefly before spinning and stalling, or the car let him down, actually. Meanwhile, his teammate Damon Hill now has Schumacher looming in his mirrors again.
Yes, they seem. It's almost like Schumacher gives it a real bashing for a couple of laps, backs off for a lap or two to let everything cool down again, and then gets back on the loud pedal. But one doesn't know if it isn't Damon doing exactly the same thing, and when he does, he pulls away. But there's no doubt about it that Schumacher isn't going to be hanging about. He's giving it everything. Alesi is too, and you can see Berger there right out onto those curbs. Slower section through. These are the second gear sections. I mean, can you imagine a circuit with 7 second gear corners? That is ridiculously hard work. I bet they're really pleased that they have this little automatic setup. And we are going to have a pit stop any second right here.
During the off-season, Dr. Harvey Postlethwaite, the technical director for the Tyrrell team, says they did an extensive analysis of all the Formula One circuits, and they found out that the average corner in Formula One racing is a second gear corner taken at about 75 miles an hour, and that's what they've designed the Tyrrell to be at its best around.
It's pretty darn depressing, isn't it? when you heard Villeneuve earlier saying just how he loves a very, very fast circuit, fast curves. I believe all drivers love fast circuits. Jean Alesi just clicked in a 1 minute 30.7. Remember, that is very nearly as quick as pole position yesterday, but still over a second and a half off what he did in warm-up this morning. It's remarkable that they went so much better this morning without that sand on the circuit, without the winds.
Alesi is third in line. There you see the gap hill to Schumacher. But these gaps are pretty much irrelevant at this point, given the way the accordion has been expanding and contracting around this racetrack. Berger has a lot of critics to answer with his performances. A lot of folks beginning to wonder if Berger is not over the hill at age 38.
I think what you have to respect in somebody that is a little bit older than the others is that the guy is only going to give it his all when he's happy with the car. A young driver will give it everything because he doesn't know any different. But a man like Berger, very, very experienced, very mature, highly, successful driver, is going to take it easy until he's happy with that car. Why should he risk it until he's feeling happier? He's obviously feeling happier in his race car this weekend. He certainly wasn't happy when we talked to him earlier in the weekend.
Ferrari. Lots of rumors swirling around Ferrari. One of them states that as early as next year, Ferrari may break with tradition by naming a title sponsor for the team. Don't be surprised if it becomes known as Marlboro Ferrari in 1997. That, of course, will have the late Enzo Ferrari turning in his grave. He is the man who once said, "My cars do not smoke."
They have done on a few occasions, though. Interesting little piece of nonsense. The cars are actually pulling 3.9 G under braking at the end of the pit straight. That is an amazing... That means that with the helmet on, these drivers are actually... Oh, that is an interesting... Oh, just Brundle is pushed out there.
Yukio Katayama in the Tyrrell, the white car.
Yeah, but he lost 2 places through that, poor old Martin. But just finish what I was saying. That means 3.9 G, their helmet on their head, and their head actually weighs 88 pounds. That means every time they brake at the end of that pit straight, they're actually getting 88 pounds of thrust forward as they're trying to slow the car down on their head. That's tremendous. Oh, slow-going car there. That's a
white car.
Never quite.
It'd have to be a Tyrrell or a Benetton. Schumacher pounding through the S's, now coming around to lap cars. That's Luca Badois in the pathetically slow 40 car. That team says, following this weekend, we junk these machines. The cars are completely uncooperative. They will give a full assault to their 1996 car, which they plan to debut at the Nürburgring in the next race.
I hope they're not going to start complaining that they're developing the new car all for the rest of the season until they junk it again. You can really see that bump just as they go to turn in. We lost a few cars here over the weekend. Little bump there just as they turn in.
Speaking of new cars, Ferrari has a decision to make this week, whether or not it's a result of all the pressure in the Italian press given their relative lack of success thus far this year, but a decision, we are told, will be taken this week as to whether Ferrari will build a completely new car shortly. Mika Salo in the pits, the team working slowly, the engine cover will come off, and that about kisses off his chances of scoring in this race.
Ferrari going by, one of the 40s. Look at that power. Look at the way it actually streams away.
There you see Ferrari's woes recently. Not since 1979 and Jody Scheckter has Ferrari won the Drivers' Championship. Only 2 victories in the last 35 races, including, of course, Jean Alesi's breakthrough win in Canada last year.
This is an interesting shot. Alesi was right up the back of that 40 car. And now he's dropped back a bit coming out of the corner. It just shows they sort of actually pulls away.
Tarso Marquez, the youngest man in Formula One right now, the young Brazilian. Meanwhile, you see Mika Salo's stop continues. One of the Minardis out there going relatively slowly.
That can't still be Alesi trying to get around.
I think that might be, that's the race leader Damon Hill getting around Andrea Montermini in the other 40. Here comes Michael Schumacher. Beginning to lap back markers, still very early in the Grand Prix of Argentina. We are live from Buenos Aires. We'll be back with more. Damon Hill leads Schumacher, Alesi, Berger, Villeneuve, and Coulthard. This weekend, the Benetton team attended a fashion show. Benetton, of course, being one of the world's leading producers of sportswear. As you see, Jean Alesi and Flavio Briatore. Looks like Gerhard Berger saw something in a sweater that he liked.
course, these guys are very backward in coming forward, aren't they, racing drivers? Very reserved. Oh, they're on the stage posing now.
Gerhard Berger probably preeminent among the reserved racing drivers when it comes to the social life. Back in action live at the circuit, Oscar Alfredo Galvez. There comes Jean Alesi running third behind Michael Schumacher in the Ferrari, and this man, Damon Hill, with 2 victories thus far this year, going for his 16th career win. Thus far, he has been untouchable.
And he's actually pulling away bit by bit. He's up to about 7.5-second lead now. Schumacher being fairly well pressed by Alesi, who's somewhat closer. But of course, pit strategy, as we've seen in many occasions last year, is what this racing's all about.
Or pit strategy. Michael Schumacher now sliding a lot. Those tires may be going away. Mika Salo, meanwhile, after a 3.5-minute pit stop, is back out on the track, but he is 2 laps down.
Yeah, that was obviously the white car we saw cruising around slowly earlier, and he was just making his way back to the pits. But there's one mighty big gap down back to young Jacques Villeneuve. I'm surprised he hasn't made more impressions so far, but he's been very quick in practice all through the weekend, getting quicker all the time, quick in qualifying, but not really up there. And I think this race with him out there and really be getting his teeth into something, we should see perhaps something happening after his pit stop, something when he gets some fresh tires, clear bit of road, and all to go for.
That graphic showed you that Alesi is consistently faster than Schumacher at this point. Here's Mika Hakkinen with the McLaren. McLaren Mercedes. Boy, the Mercedes have had a Mercedes team, I should say, have had a fraught
And they weren't
weekend.
ready for that one, Bob.
Absolutely not.
They were not ready. He's cruised in, obviously, with the engine dead, and that's about it. And looks like he's undoing the wheel.
Steve Hallam, the engineer, comes to Hakkinen's side. Mercedes this weekend, first of all, they had 3 engines delivered, not to the McLaren garage, but to the Ferrari garage, where they stayed out in the pit lane all night. Fortunately, were left untouched. The following night, someone got into the garage and dismantled the top end of one of the engines, apparently for a closer look at its pioneering variable trumpet inlet system. And then finally, one of their V10s fell off of a delivery truck in the pit lane and was absolutely ruined. Not a weekend that Norbert Haug from Mercedes will recall with fondness.
No, they needed a bit more luck than that, and obviously Hakkinen's car has been malingering the whole way through the race, gradually slipping back, not at all happy with it, and finally comes in the pits. It's very sad because he had 2 wonderful races in Melbourne and in Brazil last weekend, so he needed a decent result again to keep Mercedes in there, because although they're not been desperately fast, they have been up there in the points, and that's what it matters at the end of the year. Look at those bumps. Look at those bumps as they come into the braking area to switch in the corner. You've got to be right in the right position when you hit those bumps, otherwise you're never going to make the turn in.
Ferrari team prepares for the arrival of one of their cars. Alesi draws ever closer to Michael Schumacher for second. Gerhard Berger holding station in fourth.
And he's actually not losing anything at all to Master Villeneuve. So, you know, it's status quo at the moment back there. In fact, settling down into rather a dull race at this point, I'm afraid to say. But it's good to see Alesi still pushing Schumacher. And Schumacher, no doubt, not wanting to give anything away. I would figure that it'll be Schumacher that will go in the pits, because Irvine, oh, here he goes. Schumacher makes the dive for the pit lane. 75-mile-an-hour speed limit in the pit lane, which, of course, as you probably know, is automatically set. They press a button on the wheel, and the car automatically, as near as darn it, will go 70 miles an hour. 75, should I say.
Here comes the world champion over the static charge grounding tabs on the tarmac. Looks like a good stop so far.
Superb pit stop, 7.1 seconds. That is a brilliant pit stop, one has to admit. Of course, they have 7 sets of tires for the whole weekend, and Schumacher is very conservative on his tires.
Scuff tires, it would appear.
Yeah. He obviously bedded those in practice, put them on, because as we've appreciated, this circuit, in fact, does not scuff tires at all well, and they have a great drop to get the tires up to temperature.
Mika Hakkinen taking a look at the rear end of his McLaren. A lot of debris on that rear wing, too. Someone out there is spewing something, or else it's just the dust from this very dusty racetrack.
Well, you only need a little slurry of oil, and of course the dust comes and it just lies on it. We saw Damon's face and his helmet after Melbourne, just to see what happens when there's a little bit of oil protruding from the car in front. So if you get a lot of that, certainly midfield where the cars maybe are dropping back a bit because of mechanical problems, then you do get covered in this oil. Damon has no problem with that. today, because he's well out in front, and he's only got to worry about the cars that he comes up to lap, and he's not behind them very long before he nips by. Now, he really doesn't have to worry about his mirrors. He's just going to concentrate totally on keeping his head out front, keeping his place, keeping himself on the track in the right place, picking those bumps out, riding the corners, getting the lines absolutely perfectly, and just keeping that pace up, and that's what he has to do. One of the Benettons comes in now. It's a Lazy coming in for some tyres and fuel. We'll just see how quick this stop is.
See
5 seconds.
5 seconds stop. Now that's astonishing.
That is really, really... But of course, I guess they didn't put much fuel in. They're obviously going for a multi... I guess it'll be 3 stops, do you suppose, with that?
At least 2, I would guess,
yeah,
with
well,
5 seconds of fuel in the car.
Yeah. And he nips out... Whoa, look at that. Just between Villeneuve and... That's between Villeneuve and Schumacher. He just got out there in front of him. Oh, and of course, Villeneuve was right behind Alesi, as you'll see. And of course, Villeneuve is going to try and get by Alesi on tyres that are scuffed, but of course aren't really up to real racing temperature. Alesi's going to do his darndest to make sure that young Villeneuve stays behind.
It'll be Villeneuve and Schumacher. Meanwhile, Damon Hill, we expect to pit at the end of this lap. Patrick Head, the technical director for this team, had an interesting welcome to Buenos Aires. Got to the hotel, gave the cabbie a 50, turned around, put his bags down. When he turned around, the cabbie said, "You gave me a 5." Patrick said, "I did not." You can imagine how that argument went. As Patrick said later, the man had to work hard for his money, but it wound up costing the Williams team $100. Ferrari team now getting ready for another.
Did you see that bump as he came over there? It's quite a bump right there under the start-finish line. It really jars the cars around. But of course they are at high speed and they're not actually braking. Where it really is severe is where you're braking like that, you go over the bump and it really bashes the shocks down, you hit the bump stops, really upsets the car, kicks the car in the air, then of course you can't turn in the corner.
Saw the large gap from Gerhard Berger in second to Michael Schumacher in third. Schumacher has made a stop, as has Alesi in fourth. Hill will not be able to retain the lead. In fact, he might not come back in the top 5, as you see.
Did you see that opposite? He looks like he's got a big problem on with his car.
That must be Alesi. Those tires look very new.
Yeah, that looked really mighty. Looked like he had a terrible moment coming into the corner. He had a terrible moment in, and even on the straight, he was still seen to be trying to pick up some opposite lock. That was astonishing.
It was interesting. Alesi in the pole position press conference, in which the top 3 drivers in qualifying attend. Alesi said, "I have 3 sets of tires scuffed and ready to go. But those look like new tires." While Damon Hill needing to put in hot laps, now he heads for the pits. The race leader is in. Gerhard Berger will take over the lead. The question is, where will Hill come out relative to Schumacher in third?
He's got to do better than a 7-second stop, but of course he does have a 9-second buffer. As of course, before Schumacher had pitted, that is.
It's like a good stop. Right on the marks. Ready on the left front.
Oh, it's a slow one. Not very good, but he had a buffer anyway. So we'll see what happens. Berger is just coming the pits, so of course there'll be a stop right there as well. Berger's having a slow stop, but he's out in fractionally under 8 seconds.
Ricardo Rosset in as well. There's Michael Schumacher at the back, so Damon Hill does hold on to the race lead.
Yeah, and that looks like Alesi's right behind Schumacher and Villeneuve right behind him. Of course, Villeneuve has one pit stop to do to catch up, unless they've decided to go for a different pit stop strategy for Villeneuve. But we've just learned that Villeneuve is coming in next lap, so therefore that wasn't very clever of me to say that. But it was some gamble I think I might have liked to take. I'm interested to see just what Schumacher can do here and make up a bit of time on Hill, and he is actually making the time up on these opening laps. There's this move again. I just don't understand it. But Alesi was very, very generous in there, but he had a few problems. But Schumacher went round the outside. It's almost as though he lost a gear or something.
You know what? I'm not sure that was Alesi. I think what I thought were new tires with those white stripes on the tires, which I think was debris or something that he picked up off the road. I think that might have been Gerhard Berger, who has not stopped, and as a result is on old tires and probably sliding around some.
Yeah, but he should be way out in front. He had a 27-second break on everybody just before.
Well, no, let me take that back. Now, Berger has stopped. Well,
he has now, but he hadn't when we commented on that. One doesn't know, maybe Alesi just had a moment. I mean, you've got to admit, it was Schumacher and it was a Benetton. And I would think something like he missed a gear or something like that, maybe dropped back a bit, just enough to let him by.
Well, Alesi is all over Michael Schumacher for second once again, at any rate. Heard an interesting story about Jacques Villeneuve this weekend. Did you know that as of July 1st, Jacques Villeneuve can drive the Williams Formula One car as fast as he wants, but he cannot, under any circumstances, as you see young Jacques in the pits, he cannot drive the team transporter, because beginning in July in England, all the heavy-duty truck drivers will have to take their eye tests without assistance from glasses or contacts. And of course, Villeneuve wears them.
Well, I guess I'd be happy enough if I was just a race car driver. I don't think I want to drive a truck. Sometimes I think they feel they are driving a truck, but believe me, I'm sure they're much happier. They get much better paid than $8 an hour.
I should say so. Villeneuve says he was distracted by all the press attention in Brazil, so he has cut back on his press commitments this weekend. We'll be back live to Buenos Aires. Moment here, one of the 40s is on its roll hoop.
But the driver's obviously all right because he's taking the wheel off and he's extricating himself from the car.
Well, he's trying.
Not totally out.
You saw the corner workers backing away. That's Luca Badois. A young Italian who goes by the nickname Maverick. The tires appear to be okay, but the bottom of the car is chewed up. I wonder if the bumps have claimed their first victim.
He's a little bit sore, that is for certain. Doesn't look at all good there. It looks like he's pretty well cut up on his back. I wish they'd get some medical guy there. Can't believe they're taking so long. That is ridiculous. And there should be somebody there helping him out of the car long before that. And this is meant to be Formula One, you know, the ultimate in motor racing, and we should have the best first aid people there are available, and they should be right there. Here we go. Well done. Little Renault Clio pattering around. This is the shot of the car. Whoa, it did stop quickly, but another car involved.
Evidently hits something. They have the safety car on the track as now Maverick gets up and walks away.
Well, he looks all right, but it just shows how lucky they have got these new areas around the cockpit to hold the driver's head so he doesn't pop out of the car.
There's Mika Hakkinen. Moments ago he told James Allen that the car just died on him. The engine simply stopped and they don't know why. Now there is the safety car, which brings up an interesting point in Formula One. Many of these drivers do not know what to do when the safety car is on the racetrack. Now they instituted a briefing for the drivers before the season began and tested them for their knowledge of the procedures. So we'll have to see whether everyone understands, including the safety car driver. And here's another look at what happened to Badois. Two other cars involved.
Yeah, two other cars, and he looks like he hit the curbs, slid on the grass, and the wheels actually dug in, and over he went.
Might have touched wheels with another car. That's often the reason the Formula One cars fly, as we saw in the first race of the year in Melbourne when Martin Brundle had his big one. Meanwhile, racing going on behind the safety car as Damon Hill comes up behind one of the Minardis. Looks like Pedro Diniz in the Ligier as well.
I thought when there was a safety car on the track, they should have a full course yellow, but this is Formula One, and I would have thought it would have been very logical to have put the full course yellow out if there's a safety car out there, because nobody seems to be slowing down very much. That car didn't seem to roll very far. It just went off the track and just turned over. Oh, the safety car is allowing everybody by it. It's just going to the scene of the incident, and then of course they feel there it is again. That shot. The marshal's running away. The wheel's not turning nothing. He just now who is that? Oh, that's one of the
Ligers again. I believe that was Diniz. There is the self-same Brazilian being followed by the race leader Damon Hill. Last time we saw a safety car in Formula One was Belgium last year. See the dust being kicked up. Meanwhile, Rubens Barrichello has taken advantage of the downtime for a pit stop. Very slow one. Probably a one-stop strategy, I would guess, given the amount of fuel they put in. Tyrrell crew busy on someone. Could Mika Salo be back in with continuing problems? On the Jordan, notice that mid-wing they are using this weekend.
Oh, they've now picked up the leader of the race. That's what it was all about. So now they're going to be flicking their switches to alter their mixture on the cars, and they're cruising behind the pace car.
Here's another look. Obviously contact with that car on the left of your screen. That is the Ligier, I believe. Has already been made. Over he goes. One of the Tyrrells perhaps going by in the background, which might explain why we saw the Tyrrell in the pits. There must have been contact.
We're going to have to wait until James Allen gets in there and interviews one of them, because there's no way we can make a prediction out of what we saw in that shot. We'd only make a fool of ourselves.
Yeah, never let the facts get in the way of a good story. You see the top four cars bunched up, awaiting the rest of the field. Meanwhile, they'll try to drag that stricken 40 away from the edge of the racetrack. Now they will lift it away.
Well, there's no doubt about that. It's not really severely damaged. It just flicked over and landed on the top of its guardrail, on its roll cage. But what astonishes me is that he actually managed to get out so simply. But it really is something to say that the safety features they're incorporating these days certainly do have an effect, and that meant that he did not drop his head or his shoulders at all. Despite seatbelts, in an impact you do get thrust, and he did actually hang in there.
While the field circulates behind the safety car, we'll take this opportunity for a timeout, and we'll be back with more live from Buenos Aires in a moment. In Buenos Aires, this was a situation seconds ago as Pedro Diniz in his Ligier
just had the engine blow up.
Exploded on the racetrack.
And of course, then he spun, and of course, as he's going backwards, the flames are encompassing him, but he leapt out straight away, thank goodness, and ran away apparently unhurt at all, but certainly shaken.
Meanwhile, more pit stops. The safety car still on the racetrack with the field in tow. There you see at the lower left where Diniz had the most astonishing on-track incident I have ever seen. Meanwhile, pit stops continue. There you see the remains of the Ligier. Here's a look.
Here he comes again. He's not using all the roads. Suddenly smoke out the back of the car. Obviously oil explodes all over the exhaust. Round he goes, the oil on the back tires, and of course then he's engulfed in these flames as he goes backwards. Fortunately, he spins back around again, so he's basically out of the flames as he comes to rest.
Here's a world feed replay overlapping with our own. But look at the comprehensiveness of the fire. It is absolutely everywhere, all the way up to the cockpit.
But how did that fuel get out there? I mean, I thought they're meant to be pretty well safe with these new... Oh, look at the marshal going down on the ground. But the driver gets out straight away. But I'm surprised that it managed to throw that much fuel out away from the car. It must have really got at the fuel tank straight away. That's very, very bad. Something they'll obviously have to look at.
Amazing. Well, the fire quickly put out. The car looks relatively undamaged.
Yes, it does, really. I mean, they put it out very quickly, considering that man only had one fire extinguisher in his hand.
Ligier's $10 million man. Meaning that's what he brings to the team, not that's what they pay him. One more look. Now, obviously, there's liquid spewing here, and then it ignites.
No control over the car, so flames lapping around his head as he goes backwards. But, of course, has these phenomenal Nomex outfits on. And then the fuel is puking out either side of the car, all over the back of the car, all over the ground. The car is roaring away, and then we see the driver extricate himself from the car and, of course, run away. Thank goodness for that.
Once again, we return to the world feed, which is replaying the accident again.
That just goes to show, in fact, just despite this new safety features in the cockpit, they can still get out quickly. First time I've actually seen anybody get out in a real hurry. So it shows you just have to undo the belt, twist, and come out of the car.
Good point. This yellow flag period brought on by Luca Badua's flip in the 40. Another curious circumstance we didn't get a close look at. I believe he collided with Pedro Diniz, though, and perhaps that's what contributed to Diniz's Ligier having whatever mechanical breakdown it had to throw that fuel everywhere.
It might well have been, Bob, but I don't know. He's carried on for 2 or 3 laps since that, although albeit behind the pace car. He might well have gone in the pits, of course, to check it, because he was on his own, not in the line, as we see here.
Well, a frightening moment. Fortunately, a happy ending. We remain behind the safety car, that is. A little over an hour remaining in the race. We are on a 2-hour time limit in Formula One. We'll be back. Argentina, where's the beef? Well, the best in the world is here in Argentina. In Brazil, this sort of restaurant would be known as a churrascaria, a meat restaurant, basically. What they call them here in Argentina, I'm not exactly sure, but they are wonderful. The Jordan team enjoyed an evening out. I wonder if James Allen made... Oh, of course he did. There you see Martin Brundle, Eddie Jordan, Rubens. For Martin Brundle, this is his first visit to Argentina for the Grand Prix. For Rubens Barrichello, he calls it his second home race. We are back live. You ride along with a safety car brought out when Luca Badua of Italy collided with Pedro Diniz in the Ligier. Badua flipped onto the roll hoop. He climbed out, limping, but all right. And moments later, following a pit stop, Diniz's Ligier absolutely exploded in flames. Both cars have been removed, and any moment now, we should be back underway. It will be a single file restart. And Jacques Villeneuve will definitely have the advantage in this circumstance, I would believe. Safety car is now off. Field is back underway, and they are bunched up at the front. Schumacher very slow there. Dropping back perhaps to get a run at the race leader. There's Villeneuve, 5th in line, just ahead of David Coulthard.
Villeneuve will be very happy with that because he's made up about the 20 seconds he was behind. So suddenly he's got another crack at having a go at trying to prove himself. He's already having a look down the inside there of Berger, all over the back of Berger. And behind that, of course, we've got Coulthard not having too quick a start. He's got somebody all over him as well. But, of course, we're now going to have the tyres have cooled off, the drivers have cooled off, and it's going to open itself up into a second race totally. Hello, somebody's already out in the sand. Frenzen's off. He's not having a good weekend at all. Not at all happy this weekend. He's way back 16th. In fact, it looks like you can see some of the fuel and oil from that car that caught a light earlier. Obviously, I wouldn't say it was that created this, but certainly Frenzen's out there in the sand as well.
I agree completely. I suspect that had something to do with Frenzen's problems. A big disappointment for the German. The Ford Cosworth people brought new exhausts for this weekend in order to give the car a little bit more drivability, working differently with the downforce producing rear end diffuser that handles literally hundreds and hundreds of liters of super hot air pumping out of these engines at the extraordinary revs they create. Right there, the Renault, perhaps 17,000.
Look at Lazy having a time of his life. He's really going for it. I mean, he is something else. You just give him something to aim for, and he's right there. And he can sense, of course, another race ahead of him again. I mean, Hill had streaked away. Hill again is easing away now. But, of course, Schumacher has got a Lazy all over the back of him. You then got Berger with Villeneuve all over the back of him. And it'd be nice to see Jacques make a move here and get by Berger and just see what happens. Here we go, Jacques overtaking. A good pass. No, he doesn't get by. Berger takes the line, and Master Villeneuve can't quite make it.
The safety car was on the track for 7 laps of our 72 schedule. This was the scene of the Ligier accident, and that's where the Sauber just went off. Berger trying to hold off the attentions of Jacques Villeneuve. David Coulthard up into 6th. His teammate Mika Hakkinen is out. Unknown problems. Coulthard, this is his best run of the year in the McLaren.
Yes, and he's got Eddie Irvine all over him, just behind him, so he's going to have to keep his act together. It'd be great to see. Oh, and now we have a Minardi off the road in the sand. Why do they keep going off the road like this? I'm sure they're being paid to keep it on the tarmac. That's poor old Marquez, of course, only got 2 laps in last week in Brazil, and here he is out already. But he did do a good, not just easily out. He hit the back, I would think, of Martin Brundle and disappeared off out. Oh, look at it, knocking all the wings off the front and filling everything up with stones and chippings.
Left his braking just that little bit too late on this very slick racetrack, and he paid for it.
Boy, they are bunched up now. They're really close. That's the advantage of having a little incident and having some yellow cautions, which of course we see a lot of in America, but it really does make the race more interesting. I'm sure Damon is not the least bit impressed with the fact they've had a full course yellow.
Let's take another look at that. Coming up behind Brundle, yep, just drove right into the back of him. We saw some blue tire smoke.
Yeah, he was well out of control as he hit Brundle up the tail.
See that extra little mini wing mounted on the rear wing of the Minardi. For Tarso Marquez, that is the end of his Formula One career for the moment. I believe he's driving just the Brazilian and Argentinian rounds. And we will see young Italian Giancarlo Fisichella back in the car in Germany. Kids, don't try this at home. I am a trained professional. Cars out of the race. Mika Hakkinen in the McLaren. Mika Salo in the Tyrrell after multitudinous problems. Ricardo Rosset, Luca Badua, Ukio Katayama, Tarso Marquez, Pedro Diniz, and Heinz-Harald Frentzen. But it was Diniz's departure that you'll be seeing on highlight clips for a long time to come.
Look at those cars kicking over those curbs, very smooth curbs. Having said that they're affected by bumps, it makes you realize they can run over those curbs and it doesn't affect them at all. Yet he hit a bump on the track and they really notice it. So the bumps are really severe on this circuit.
So we have a breakaway out front again. Look at the dust on the racetrack. Now, unfortunately, for technical reasons, we're not able to bring you James Allen live from the pits, but he has spoken with Pedro Diniz, who says he simply hit the brakes and the car exploded in flames. 2 Williams Renaults, 2 Benetton Renaults, and 1 Ferrari. 5-car breakaway. Interestingly, those 3 teams were the only ones that escaped a customs kerfuffle in Brazil. Virtually the rest of the Formula One grid had trouble getting their cars out of Brazil, and they were a day late getting set up here in Argentina.
I don't mind what the journalists they say in Italy about Ferrari not having won. They weren't going to win this year, supposedly. And you can't say that Schumacher is not giving his money's worth. I mean, that guy is giving it every single bit of his talent. We haven't seen a Ferrari chasing like this last year up there with Hill at all. And there is this man who is the best in the world, no doubt, really giving Ferrari their money's worth. And sure, they've got to get the car better. He says, I need a lot of time to get this car right. And of course, when they get back to Europe, they can do a lot of testing at Fiorano and the various tracks they're allowed to test at around Europe. And I think we'll see him right up there. And no doubt, at some point, he's going to have Hill behind him for quite a long time later in this season.
Word from James in the pits is that Tarso Marquez says he simply lost the car under braking and hit Brundle. Word from the Jordan garage is that Brundle suffered significant damage. He's still on the racetrack, but the car is not performing as it should. And no surprise.
Not surprising. I'm surprised he got a right-hand rear wheel at all. Villeneuve's dropping back a bit there from Berger. Makes you wonder just why Jacques isn't quite up to it today. But of course, we all know as racing drivers that you only want just the slightest thing out of shape with your handling. And on a circuit with 17 or 8, in fact 18 corners, you need a car to be absolutely au point, as they say.
Le poivre, does that mean they blacken it with pepper?
I said au point.
Oh.
P-O-I-N-T, meaning on the point, not on the pepper.
Learn something every day. Now it is a 3-car breakaway. Here comes Gerhard Berger, dropping back a bit from Alesi, and Villeneuve dropping back behind him. The Benetton team, in addition to picking up the hype sponsorship that came from the Arrows Club, has also signed a deal with the Fond Metal Labs. As you take a look at Tarso Marquez bidding good afternoon to Martin Brundle, who now also is officially out of the race, I should add. Benetton has signed a deal with the Fond Metal technology firm in Italy, which dropped its relationship with Tyrrell as of this year. That gives them access to one of only 4 half-scale rolling road wind tunnels in the world. And Nick Worth, who used to run the Simtech team, is heading up the so-called Special Projects division for Benetton. In fact, it is rumored that Nick Worth will move over to Ligier now that Tom Walkinshaw is gone, to take over for Walkinshaw's employee Frank Durney as technical director of that team. Worth, one of the brilliant young designers in Formula One. Be interesting to see the impact he has on Ligier. The action continues and something burns in the distant background. We'll be back with more from Buenos Aires in just a moment. The deuce. Michael Schumacher has Jean Alesi all over him as we watch live the action in Buenos Aires at the Grand Prix of Argentina. Bob Varsha, Derek Bell with you. We want to wish everybody a happy Easter and a pleasant Passover season.
Alesi's very, very close indeed to Michael. Not so much in this shot, but during the preceding lap. And he obviously looks it there. Hill still getting the fastest lap. He just did a 1:30.1 now, 1:29.8. So he's got the bit between the teeth and he's going for it. Alesi is really pushing Schumacher. It's interesting to see where the little Benetton car has a bit of a better stability, and that's through the low-speed corners, whereas the Ferrari seems to have that extra grunt coming out of the corner onto the straightaways. Again, oh, look at Schumacher getting the car sideways coming onto the straight. I'm delighted to see the way the Ferraris so far, taking 3, this being the 3rd race, are so reliable. I think this is astonishing when you consider they'd hardly done any laps at all in pre-season testing, and they're having mighty problems with the reliability. And here they are with a car that works very, very well indeed, and the engine's exceptionally good.
I believe that's Luca Badua talking with the 40 team. He had a big flip after colliding with Pedro Diniz. Diniz, for his part, exploded in flames a couple of laps later. Meanwhile, Tarso Marquez is back in the garage. He's had a bit of a think about his crash into Martin Brundle, and he has issued a quote. Brundle is crazy. I think he believes old Martin short-braked him into that corner, or braked too soon at least. But I think Marquez probably has to bear some of the responsibility.
I would say so. I don't think Marquez was aware that Martin had somebody in front of him. Martin possibly had to back up a bit early for the car in front of him, which meant, of course, that it was like a concertina effect with Master Marquez taking the back of Martin's car and disappearing off into the boonies. Of course, it has solved their problem of what to do with the chassis for the rest of the year, hasn't it?
Absolutely. Ferrari pits prepares for the arrival of one of its cars. Meanwhile, Damon Hill leads Michael Schumacher and draws away once again. Jacques Villeneuve beginning to apply a little pressure to Gerhard Berger, who in turn is right up on his teammate's gearbox.
Now, with the obvious happening here of Schumacher going into the pits, one assumes, for tyres and fuel, and you saw he has been sliding around quite a lot. It'll be interesting just to see if he comes out behind the car of Alesi.
Interesting, they're showing these tails away shots of Schumacher's car. Look at the top of the rear wing, the way it's bowed down. That just does not look right as Schumacher makes his way into the pits.
Yeah, he's really coming in the pit road quite fast there. Just the way he had some opposite lock on the first part, although, of course, now he's restricted to 75 miles an hour. And it just shows you the sort of downforce there is on these cars and how much pressure there is on the centre of that rear wing. Very, very important. And it's good, of course, that they're actually getting the airflow to the middle of that rear wing. This is a slow stop, my goodness. 12, 13 seconds. That is far too slow a stop. But, of course, they might well be putting an extra bit of fuel in to see him through to the end of the race. Whereas the last stop was a short stop, and of course it's only 6 seconds.
There goes Pedro Lamy of Portugal in the other Minardi, teammate to Tarso Marquez. Looks like he's just past the pit out. And he is finished, bringing us down to 12 cars of the 22 starters remaining in the race. Damon Hill with a piece of clear track. Last week in Brazil, he broke a tie with his late father, the two-time world champion Graham Hill, for career victory totals in the Hill family. Today he goes for his 16th.
Hill is really making a break of it now. It does take him a few laps to make that break, but then suddenly he goes, and I think Schumacher trying to fend off Alesi there gave Hill that break. Obviously, Schumacher wasn't happy with his tyres, well, at least I wouldn't have thought he was. He was sliding around a lot, losing a lot of time, so he figured it was best to go in the pits, put those fresh tyres on. But of course it meant that Alesi was actually eased back a bit. It again will be fair to say, we'll see what Alesi does now about maybe picking up a bit on Hill. Now he's got a clear lap in front of him rather than having Schumacher to contend with, because whatever way you like to say, oh, and there's Villeneuve, I would say,
that's,
oh no,
Pedro
sorry. I just saw the colour of the helmet, I couldn't believe it in the blue overall.
Easy to do.
Yeah. But of course, you know, Alesi now has clean air. When he was sitting behind Schumacher for the whole race as he has been, there's a lot of turbulence there, and you cannot enter these fast corners as you would when you're on your own. So now he's got the fastest lap, just to prove what I was saying, 29.7, because he's got clear road and clear air, so he hasn't got to worry about the turbulence. And they do get a tremendous amount of buffing, and of course the front of the car is inclined to lift, which creates an understeer situation, and they're not about to get into the corner with an understeer. So now he has this clear bit of road, and I'm sure he's not about to want to rush in the pits and change tyres or anything like that. He's going to want to stay out as long as he can to make a bit of impression on Damon, and therefore get up there a little bit, so when he does stop for tyres, he comes out maybe ahead of Schumacher, which gives him that break to get up on the hill.
That bump into the Ascari corner. It's not really a bump, it's more like driving off a cliff. Imagine what it's going to be like when the Grand Prix motorcycles arrive here in the fall. We'll be back. On April 28th, a Formula 3000 race at the Nürburgring was snowed out, so be sure to be with us from the Eifel Mountains. Something interesting is happening here in the Grand Prix of Argentina. Jean Alesi is catching Damon Hill at a tremendous clip. Meanwhile, Gerhard Berger is falling into the clutches of Jacques Villeneuve.
But they're not dropping back far from Alesi either, so the pace has suddenly picked up. In fact, Alesi's just had the quickest lap the last 3 laps in a row, and he's made up quite a lot on Damon Hill here. Alesi is something else when he gets it together. When he gets the car feeling just the way he wants it, he really does go for it. Interesting shot there of Coulthard in a little group, lying in something like, I think, 6th or 7th place.
A very brief look. You saw one of the pit crews getting ready as well. Now we're back to Coulthard.
And that's with, that's Johnny Herbert in there. Is that no?
That's one of the arrows coming up from behind.
Verstappen. Sorry, that's Verstappen followed by Irvine. They're having a good old race back there for 5th, 6th, 7th and 8th place. And Schumacher's in 8th. It just shows what a disadvantage it is after a full caution yellow, as we saw earlier, full course yellow, that Schumacher came in for his tyres, but it puts him way back in amongst the group, whereas normally at that point they'll be so spread out, maybe 40, 50 seconds. He's got the pit stop, and he's now had to go in into the middle of a very fast group, and he's got to get by them, which isn't easy.
You ride with Eddie Irvine. Ahead is Verstappen. Ahead of him, David Coulthard. This is on the edge of the points for top 6. Meanwhile, a Benetton in. Jean Alesi. Boy, that'll be a relief to Damon Hill.
with a quick stop. Yeah, that's a pretty... Oh,
and
he stalled it. I don't believe it. He's going to be so upset. Oh, he's lost so many seconds. That is such a pity. That was really going to be, to me, one of the most exciting parts of this race. It's brand new tyres. They're trying to start it. Looks like they got the wheels running. He's ready to go. Lets the clutch out and away he goes. It looked like he just wasn't really ready to go, and they said go, and he just wasn't quite the right time. That is tragic, in my opinion, for this race, because that was going to be the most exciting part, as far as I was really looking forward to the future of this. Here he comes out now, right behind Schumacher, which puts him well down in the pack. Now he's got to get by Schumacher again, which he didn't want. It just shows how Schumacher lost, though, because he had a long stop both.
Yeah, Alesi lost 10 extra seconds. One of the other interesting things about Formula One engines, in addition to the incredible revs, such lightweight for such enormous horsepower, is they seem to restart so easily once they get the starter engaged at the rear.
Yes, it does start very quickly. The thing interesting on these stops is, of course, some drivers favor a clutch, a foot clutch, as we do on our road cars, but in fact they do have a clutch on the steering wheel. Now, not every driver is the same. Coulthard, for example, has a clutch. He likes the security of having a clutch in the car, so when he pulls out the pits, he uses that clutch. Other drivers, like Hakkinen, for example, he uses the little button, and he presses the button clutch to get away. But they can use both. But of course, they do lack a lot of sensitivity with these clutches, and so you've got to have the revs just right. If you can imagine, all you do to get it into gear is to press a little button, and away it goes into gear. So he has to have it just right, and the revs right. They have a load of revs on when they're doing that, but because they don't have them just right, of course, I think what happened is, as they dropped it on the road, he went to go, and he didn't have the revs up enough.
Damon Hill with a piece of racetrack to call his own. Behind him, Gerhard Berger, who's had a relatively quiet race, is now up to second place as a result of Alesi's problems in the pits. And we're getting a curious report from the pits that Eddie Irvine will be pitting shortly, and Ferrari will garage his car for some reason. So Eddie Irvine apparently having some problems. Meanwhile, Michael Schumacher, subject to the attentions of Alesi. They'll go side by side.
That was beautiful. But you've got to give him his due. I think Alesi went for it. Schumacher knows there's no messing. He knows that he's not as quick, because he's already seen that in the earlier part of the race, and of course he's almost letting Martin Brundle to at the same, and he has let Martin Brundle to. Trouble is, he lost his momentum, and that was it, and he's let 3 cars have gone by him. He just didn't need that. That was very, very unfortunate. It makes you wonder that if they're calling one car in, why aren't they calling Schumacher? I mean, he's just falling back all the way. Having opened my big mouth and talked about reliability, here we are with a Ferrari. Whoa! Opposite lock there as he comes out of the corner. He's trying to hold it tight to let the other cars by. That wasn't because of he was over driving. He's obviously going to paddle into the pits, one imagines, at the next opportunity.
Getting all sorts of warning lights. Some thumbing the radio button. Problems for Schumacher is dropping back. Ferrari's woes continue. They're under significant pressure from the press back in Italy. Here's another look at Alesi down the inside.
Beautiful move by Alesi, absolutely beautiful. I mean, really tigering on the inside. Michael backs right out of it. Daren't go out wide because there's a lot of dirt there, as you can see, right out on the dirt. He daren't get on it, so he's backed off. And of course, you see Martin Brundle making a move. And it's almost as if maybe Schumacher then found himself in the wrong gear, and of course couldn't get it together, which allowed Martin Brundle by, and of course Verstappen, who was right behind him. But they are waiting in the pits, so we'll see what happens. Here he is. Here goes Schumacher into the pits, all over the curve as well. He really is in a hurry.
Ferrari was expecting Eddie Irvine. Now they get the world champion.
He's coming in. Looks very slow to me. Oh, straight in the garage. It's not Irvine. It's obviously Schumacher that's gone in the pits terminally.
Good thing the garage door was up. Here's a look at downtown Buenos Aires. There's a look at race leader Damon Hill as Michael Schumacher climbs out.
You can hardly see any sweat on his overalls. That is most disturbing for a driver like myself. All that effort he's put in, and he doesn't look particularly hot and bothered. Oh, and there, oh, I don't believe it. There we have the other Tyrrell. But he's had a bad time today, so he's probably just cruising around, and something now finally has given up on it.
That extraordinary Yamaha V10 engine weighs just 218 pounds. It lost 44 pounds from last year. Up and down the pit lane, engine builders still can't figure out how that happened.
Did you hear? We just got a message saying the top half of Schumacher's wing was missing, which is interesting to note when you said how interesting that his wing is collapsing. Maybe some of the supports that hold the back of the wing up had broken. I had this myself at Le Mans a couple of years ago, and it's the most distressing thing when you can't see it. When you come in the pits, it's in perfect condition. Here again, we have Irvine coming in for a pit stop. Change the tyres, obviously putting fuel in, cleaning his visor. He's still got probably a tear off on there to tear off when he gets going in a minute. Those tyres have been bedded in before. Off he goes. Not over a quick stop, but nevertheless a good one at 10 seconds.
Well, at the rate the attrition is picking up, Eddie Irvine need only stay out there and be as competitive as possible. He may have a shot at some points here. He comes back out onto the racetrack in good shape. Meanwhile, Damon Hill out front continues to draw away as Schumacher talks with the Ferrari engineers. I think he's talking about that rear wing.
Well, something flew off. It looks as though something flew off, and that was it. He obviously saw it or certainly felt it. Hence, if you notice, there was a tremendous amount of oversteer at that one point just before he came in, which probably proved to him there was something definitely wrong with his aerodynamics. Damon really has it pretty much his own way now, because Alesi, as we saw, had a lousy pit stop with his stalling the engine, which is a great pity. He just overtook the Jordan just now, so the Jordan he's lapped. And there we have Villeneuve, looks like he's in second place, 11.9 seconds behind. And we don't know where Berger is. Presumably Berger's been in for a pit stop, but of course it looks like one of the Williams is coming in for a pit stop at any time. Villeneuve's coming in for tyres and fuel.
It all looks so easy from overhead. The reigning Indianapolis 500 champion and kart PPG World Series titleist.
Possibly just about to take the lead, because Damon's just come in for tyres and fuel. But he didn't expect this quite so soon. But then he's got to refuel and tyre as well, with just, what, 24 laps to go.
We are back to a Williams 1-2 at the center of your screen in the beige shirt, Carlos Reutemann. Great Formula One driver, now the premier of the nearby state government, provincial government, I should say, and a key figure in bringing Formula One back to this racetrack. A year ago, he took some laps in a contemporary Ferrari, albeit with the 3.5-liter engine. Did some very competitive times and just about brought the house down.
I actually raced against him quite a lot in Formula 2 back in the early 1970s. He was a fabulous driver. But I remember I got a bit upset with him one day and actually picked him up by the scruff of his neck and told him he was driving too dangerously. I don't think I dare go back to Argentina and see him socially, that's for sure.
Villeneuve is in. Damon Hill, incidentally, has not yet pitted. We thought the pit stop would be Damon first, but Jacques Villeneuve is opting to pit. Good, quick pit stop for the second-place car. Jacques Villeneuve's learning curve continues.
Comes out behind one of the Benettons. I guess that's probably Alesi, but I'm only guessing.
As you see, he has dropped one place to third.
Yeah, so that means that it probably means that Berger's up to second place, doesn't it? Because Berger was running right behind them just before that, after Alesi's bad stop.
You see the McLaren pits awaiting David Coulthard. His teammate Mika Hakkinen is out. Back to Villeneuve in third. His girlfriend Sandrine is on hand this weekend, getting her first taste of Formula One. I understand she was a bit surprised to find out that, unlike IndyCar, she cannot go out and sit on the pit wall in the signaling area and watch her man at work.
I believe she had a job even to get in the pit. Just shows you what it's like with credentials in Grand Prix racing today.
That's right. Michael Andretti's wife Sandy can tell you all about that.
Yet the amazing thing to me is there always seems to be a number of people that there's no way should they be there at all, but I don't know how they make it. And the people that really are important don't get there.
There's a look at the attrition. Most recently, the world champion, Pedro Lamy out, Mika Salo, both Tyrrells are now out. Martin Brundle, as a result of damage when he was hit from behind by Tarso Marquez. Pedro Diniz, by far the most dramatic exit, as his car exploded in flames. Here comes David Coulthard.
Currently lying in fourth place, so I'm sure that's knocking the brakes up a bit there as he comes in.
Last place you want to spin is in the garage.
Has been done before, Bob. That's a very good stop. 7 seconds for a pit stop at this stage, when you consider that we saw how slow some of the other teams were, losing 7 or 8 seconds to Coulthard on their refueling and tyres. All that work you put in, on the track burning away a fraction of a second a lap, and then you go in, and the team or the pit crew lose you 5 or 6 seconds. It just seems so futile.
Coulthard back to 6th as a result of the pit stop. Damon Hill heads for the pits now. There's the gap to Berger. He should be able to get in and out with a good stop from the Williams team. 30 seconds should be more than enough if he gets a good stop.
Now we will see. After a lot of controversy last year with their pit stops, we'll see just how good they are today. Hear the revs of that engine. He's not about to stall this one. Beautiful stop, beautiful stop. Yeah, their practicing they've done during the winter has certainly worked.
Out he comes. Looks like he might have a sticker tire on that right front. Scuffs elsewhere. Damon Hill back on the racetrack, and he does retain the lead. So Hill looking good. Will be able to run out the string with the rubber and the gas on board the car right now. Another good day for Williams Renault here in Argentina. We'll be back. Argentina, you watch as Gerhard Berger makes his way around. As the Grand Prix of Argentina continues, there's Michael Schumacher with the Ferrari team on the pit wall. Jean Todt on the left, the team managing director. Working around the slower 40. There's the running order. Berger in second, Villeneuve third as a result of his pit stop. Hill retained the lead on his stop. I think Gerhard Berger may have one more stop in his future. You ride with Eddie Irvine. Michael Schumacher is out of the race. Only 11 cars remain running of the 22 starters.
Irvine still very much behind Coulthard, and obviously would do his darndest, would love to get a good position for Ferrari, having had Schumacher fall out of the race.
Time for our Texaco Haviland race summary. Current leader Damon Hill, who has led the entire race once again, continuing the Williams domination of this year. We've had no lead changes, sorry to say. Out of the race, half of the field, led by Michael Schumacher. Disappointing race for Mika Hakkinen, who said the Mercedes engine just stopped in the car. Pedro Diniz exploded in flames. Martin Brundle was hit from behind by Tarso Marquez. Marquez also out of the race. Heinz-Harald Frentzen spun off after a short 7-lap safety car period. You don't often see that in Formula One. That because Luca Badua flipped his 40 after colliding with Pedro Diniz. So it's been a dramatic afternoon, as we expected it might be. Gerhard Berger making no inroads on Damon Hill. Meanwhile, Jacques Villeneuve making no inroads on Berger for second.
But I think you'll see that last time that you saw there was the lap before, when they both had to overtake the much slower car.
The 40?
Oh, the 40, I'm sorry. I was going to say footwork.
Slower than 40. It just
slower than
jumps
40,
to the mind, doesn't it?
Yeah, 39. And of course that probably gave Villeneuve a bigger gap than that would have normally happened, because he hasn't lost that much time. But we're seeing Irvine really working hard here on the back of Coulthard. You've got Panis right behind him, who's obviously catching up well, because he wasn't that close about 3 laps ago.
And Irvine's rear wing looks good. James Allen, who once again we cannot bring to you live, but he's reporting from the pit lane, spoke with Michael Schumacher, who said he knew his rear wing was collapsing when the safety car was on the track, but he thought he would try to stick it out. And boy, I can't think of a better definition of bravery right now than to travel this racetrack at these speeds, wondering about the status of your rear wing.
He was very lucky, I guess, not to lose it at all. Pity we couldn't see when he actually did lose the wing, or whether it just collapsed on him. We never quite noticed that as he came in. Of course, we had the forward-facing camera from behind his helmet, which didn't do much to show the back wing. But you see here, we have Berger now still pulling away from Villeneuve, but Villeneuve did come up from that poor 134 lap he just did up to 131. So it probably was the traffic.
Here's an interesting point. I wonder if they could put a camera on that column atop the roll hoop, looking backwards as well as, oh, stop me in a moment, as well as forwards. That would be a great view of traffic coming up from behind. Damon Hill, nice Sunday drive in Buenos Aires. We'll be right back. Live at Buenos Aires, Gerhard Berger has completed a extremely quick pit stop.
But he goes out, looks like he goes out behind Alesi, his teammate, who was in 4th place before the stop. So now Berger's in 4th place, and Alesi's up to 3rd. And of course, one assumes all the pit stops, all the conventional pit stops, are actually routine pit stops, are now over. So the race is just going to pan out and we hope that maybe Alesi can do something about Villeneuve, but I very much doubt it because he seemed to be just too far behind after that atrocious pit stop when he stalled the car.
Well, no matter what happens, it'll be a good weekend for Benetton. Not what they would have liked, but considering the way they started this season, they will take it. They are second in the Constructors' Championship standings by 26 points to 9 to their arch rivals from Williams Renault. Ferrari 1 point behind Benetton with 8. But Ferrari will not score well, if at all, in this race. Michael Schumacher's out. Eddie Irvine's running well back. And now we get word that Gerhard Berger has actually stopped on the racetrack after that great pit stop with 15 laps to go. No sign of it on Argentinian television. If in fact Berger is out there somewhere, so hold that story about Benetton's good fortune.
Yeah, if we keep following Hill, we should pass him in a minute. But they don't seem to follow anybody very long out here at the moment. Yeah, we're just saying just how reliable the Renault engines have been, and here we are with the car failing. Doesn't mean to say it was the engine, it could have been something mechanical in the electronics, because these cars are so high-tech these days that there's a million and one things that can go wrong with them.
Using a bit of the curb. Hill not letting up at all, despite a big lead, as Williams continues its domination of the season, and there is the Benetton.
Oh, they're taking the wheel off. I certainly heard but that Gerhard didn't leave the wheel off, and I hope these guys took it off. It'll be a $10,000 fine if not. No, they're putting it back on again, which isn't a good sign. That means maybe that Gerhard left it off. One of these stupid things on the rules of Formula One, that if you don't leave the wheel back in the right place, having had to take it off to get out of the car, that is, of course, you get fined. I think it's exceptionally bad to fine people for something like that when the heat of the moment it's so easy to leave a wheel off when you've done 75–80% of a race right on the limit. You have to get out and almost remember to put the wheel on. Must remember to shut the door in case the dog gets out. It's stupid things like that when you're under stress.
Oh, don't sugarcoat it, Derek. Tell us how you feel.
I do. I'm not going to hold back.
Well, there is Gerhard. For one of his best, well, certainly his best race of the year thus far. It is now over. Tough break for him. Speaking of fines, young Ricardo Rosset picked one up this weekend. He too passed the checkered flag at the end of qualifying, which is something we saw a couple of drivers do in Brazil. Rosset was whacked 10,000 US for the offense. Meanwhile, Damon Hill looking for a sweep of the first 3 races of the 1996 season. Long way to go this year, but it's looking like a Hill kind of year. We are back in Argentina, where Jacques Villeneuve lapping a good bit in arrears of his teammate Damon Hill, 129.6. In qualifying, in very windy, sandy conditions, Hill managed 130.3. I believe is that the first time we've seen under 130? Well,
no, we've seen it several. Alesi was clocking these in. He was hauling Hill in earlier. Yeah, he was really getting some 29s in, but of course he's not good enough now because he's just so far back. But it's strange that he has. Well, we haven't seen what his best lap is. 15 seconds behind between Barrichello and Alesi, but we don't know what it is from him up to Villeneuve.
See Gerhard Berger walking down the pit lane. Damon Hill is working traffic out on the racetrack. He goes around Johnny Herbert and the remaining Sauber. His teammate Heinz-Harald Frentzen took the car off the racetrack moments after we went green following a safety car period of 7 laps. Interesting rules on the table, and according to our sources, it will be approved for this year as a total 1-month hiatus on testing following the final race of the year. The rule was proposed apparently by Team Benetton's Flavio Briatore, who said, we need to give our people a break, otherwise it becomes one solid year-round activity, and we need to plan our testing so as to save on costs. As you watch Rubens Barrichello with that midship wing. Whoops.
Look at that
Jasper
move.
Verstappen attacking David Coulthard.
But what a beautiful move. I mean, there was no doubt about it. He just showed in the inside clouds of smoke, and obviously at that point, Coulthard said, over to you, sunshine. I'm letting you through. I'm not going to battle with somebody who's out of control. And of course, that was it. It's the second time we've actually seen Coulthard back out like that in this race. He obviously isn't confident enough to really take a tight line into that corner. He should have read it better than that.
That puts Verstappen up into the final points-paying position, 6th. Good look there at that midship wing. A bit of a more graceful design than what we saw on the McLaren a year ago. You also see those double radiator inlets, unique to the Jordan.
You also see that severe bump coming into the Ascari curve. Just shows you just how strong these cars are, that they put up with this for such a long time without, apparently, apart from Schumacher's damage to the wing, which may well have been to do with that, but generally you'd have thought it'd been the support to the wing that would have broken, not actually the wing itself that had the problem.
Don't forget, coming up on the 27th, on Saturday, the Grand Prix of Europe qualifying at 11 p.m. Eastern Time, and then on Sunday, live coverage of round 4 of the 1996 season, beginning at 7:50 a.m. Eastern Time, 4:50 a.m. Pacific.
You see that little wing on top of the Jordan car there, on top of the airbox. It actually is 20% more surface area on that wing than there was last year, which is quite a substantial amount. 2 teams are using it as far as we know, but it's interesting that actually none of the top 3 teams have even tried it. Maybe there isn't a facility to try it on this year's setup.
Well, in fact, Gary Anderson, who designed the Jordan, said last year's McLaren-style wing was not effective enough, whereas this year, because the cockpit size is larger, the wings can be larger, as you mentioned, 20% larger, up to 23 inches and change in length. So Anderson has mounted one. Look there at Eddie Irvine, who's had his problems coming to terms with this racetrack, but he is up into 5th right now, and that means points. Stay with us. Later in the week, John Kernan will take the wheel from Charlotte Motor Speedway as we stay on top of all of the action in motorsport. Charlotte, North Carolina, I should say, not necessarily at the Speedway, although it is a nice place to visit. There's the running order. Verstappen with the arrows up into the 6th and final points-paying position. Eddie Irvine in 5th for Ferrari. David Coulthard runs 7th. Only 10 cars remain of the 22 starters.
Yeah, Verstappen's didn't do too well in qualifying yesterday, but in fact on Friday and Saturday morning he was very, very quick. In fact, 4th quickest during the warm-up before qualifying. So he's actually putting it together for today, and you can see him really working the field over and getting a good finish there, or not finished, we're not there yet, but certainly in a good position at this time. It's interesting to note just how much maybe the Tom Walkinshaw Racing influence is already on the Arrows team, although they've only been in there a week.
Tom has a way of imposing order and discipline. Very no-nonsense businessman. I understand his group, Tom Walkinshaw Racing, and its associated aftermarket rebuilds of various street cars and racing teams all over the world in various categories of racing, generated more than 300 million pounds last year, and it could run as high as 1 billion pounds by the end of the century. Not a bad investment.
No, remarkable. I don't know how Walkinshaw does it. I mean, he also owns a cabbage farm in Scotland. His businesses are so varied, it's astonishing. Big businesses in Australia. Always a certain amount of controversy surrounds him in the racing field, where from time to time there have been some fairly close calls on one might say, the rules and regulations, or the definition thereof. It's a lovely aero shot of the Hill car there, showing it sweeping through that double right-hander, leading onto what looks like the back straightaway onto the Ascari curve.
Those wide shots do give you a sense of the speed of the cars. If you just don't look at the car with your eyes, just pick a spot in the surrounding frame and watch as the car, minute as it is, just rockets through the frame. Jean Alesi still pounding around on the 29s.
And he just doesn't give up, and I don't blame him, because if he keeps the pressure on Villeneuve, and he was only, well, we don't know just quite how many seconds he is behind at the moment. We know he was 15 ahead of Barrichello, but it'll be interesting to see just how far he is behind Villeneuve. It can't be that many seconds, in effect, because he only lost 20 seconds, but that was when he was in 2nd place.
Broken suspension sidelined Gerhard Berger. I'm surprised we haven't seen more of that. Michael Schumacher actually cracked a monocoque in the Ferrari over these bumps. I expected we'd see a bit more attrition just owing to the rough surface of the racetrack than we have.
Well, I think you have to understand that, in fact, they've got 9.6 seconds between Villeneuve and Alesi. But I think you have to understand that these cars, when they sit in there static, they actually only have 11 millimeters of ground clearance. And when they're at speed with the downforce on the car, they only have 4 millimeters of ground clearance. Well, you only need a bump like that, and they're going to hit the ground and hit it very hard. So although they have little skid plates underneath, it's not very much. And so consequently, they do take a bashing. And if they happen to alter the ride height just a bit, maybe testing the car with a full fuel load or whatever, they hit the ground, and of course they do severe damage.
We had a look at Damon Hill's pit board, advising him that his teammate runs 15 seconds behind him. Once more over the, I guess we'll call them the Ascari bumps. Interesting stat there. The winner of the first Grand Prix of the year has won the World Championship 21 times in the 46-year history of Formula One. Thus far this year, that would fall, well, not thus far, definitely this year, that honor falls to Damon Hill. He is looking more and more like championship material. He really is driving well this year, despite whatever you may think about the superiority of the Williams car. Damon really has driven well.
Well, you have to appreciate that obviously you've got young Villeneuve, who is no slouch, and I think probably the brightest young star out there. And there he is. He still isn't making any impression on Damon. And people have criticised Damon. We know it's the best car, but then Villeneuve's in the best car too. So I think Damon has had a lot of mental pressure on him during the winter, on himself, put it on himself, got himself together, and it seems a lot more relaxed this season. Interesting again to say, if I may, that we just saw Alesi pulling about another second or second and a half off Villeneuve in his third place up to second place. But of course there's only about 8 laps to go.
If the Jordan and Arrows cars can remain in the points, it will be the first time this year they have scored. Good news for those teams. Ooh, that gap continues to drop for second place. We'll be right back live to Argentina. Back live at Buenos Aires, and Jacques Villeneuve has managed to add a couple of tenths to his gap over Jean Alesi for second place in the Grand Prix of Argentina. Bob Varsha, Derek Bell with you. The Williams team looks pretty relaxed out there in the signaling area. On the pit wall, their man Damon Hill is in front. His teammate Jacques Villeneuve is second, and all is right in the Williams world.
5 laps to go, and of course Alesi was streaking in on Villeneuve there. Might have got held up a bit by that traffic. We'll have to wait to the next gap. No, it's even another half a second away, so Villeneuve obviously wasn't about to give anything away. He may well have backed off a bit when he saw that Hill was 15 seconds ahead with 10 laps to go, plus it's his teammate, and then found that Alesi was reeling him in, so he's putting the pace back on again now.
I think we can be fairly sure that Jean Alesi is not backing off. It's just not in his personality.
No, I don't think young Alesi knows just what it means to back off. Now it's up to 7 seconds, so Villeneuve isn't exactly hanging about. He's got the bit between the teeth and is determined not to sort of give the impression that he was being caught by Jean Alesi.
4 laps to go. Here's the gap we need to see from Hill to Villeneuve. But for Jacques Villeneuve's off in the Brazilian Grand Prix a week ago, in the drying conditions, the Williams teams would have run 1-2 if they finish in this order in all of the first 3 races of the season. And that kind of domination is pretty impressive.
It's very impressive for Williams, but not very good for Formula One, of course.
Exactly. I was trying to think of a way to say that delicately. It's not that good for the sport to have one team pounding around in the lead all the time.
But of course, you know, it has been quite a good race. One has to admit that Hill did have Schumacher behind him for quite a section of track. We did have Alesi pushing Hill, but of course they had their problems and have slipped back out of contention through one reason or another, and this left Hill always there in command, doing a wonderful job. I mean, it has to say that his driving is exemplary today, as it was last week, and of course as really it was in Melbourne. It's just that he couldn't get by Villeneuve.
There you see the gap, Hill to Villeneuve. It has expanded to 17 seconds. Well, I wonder if there's not a problem for Jean Alesi then, as his gap to Villeneuve increases.
Only a fraction though, Bob. I mean, he's not losing much. 3 laps to go probably now. He's probably pushing it, but he has to be realistic that he's not going to reel him in 4 seconds a lap. Verstappen's got a very nice chasing there of Irvine going on, but I think even that he's not going to do much with that with 3 laps remaining, which is a great pity because Verstappen's had a wonderful weekend. Irvine hasn't had a good weekend, but nonetheless to finish there in the Ferrari, to finish the race, is what Eddie needed. All of us at early part of the season need a Grand Prix under the belt to say, well, we've done it now, we know what it's like, we know what the fatigue is like, we know what physically it's like on our legs and on our arms and on our knees, bashing against the monocoque of the car, and of course the jolting of the head. And of course they're getting that, and today the guys that didn't perhaps finish last week are now finishing here in Argentina.
Ride with Jean Alesi. It's Been a poignant weekend here in Buenos Aires at the circuit. Oscar Alfredo Galvez with tributes to the memory of Juan Manuel Fangio, the 5-time world champion. The race came here in part to pay tribute to him a year ago. He died shortly afterward in July. This weekend, his nephew, Juan Fangio, who races Indy cars for Dan Gurney and the Toyota All-American Racers team.
You can see just how close Alesi is to Villeneuve, but with 2 laps to go, there isn't much he's going to be able to do about it, but he actually got it down to 5 seconds, as I'm sure you saw on the screen there. So he's picking up the time. As you said just now, Bob, Alesi never gives up.
Young Fangio was to have driven some of his late uncle's great Grand Prix cars here this weekend. But the Williams team sitting back, waiting for the bubbly to be distributed. At the back, Frank Williams sitting behind his bank of TV monitors, watching. As we've pointed out so many times here on Formula One, his expression will not change. He might allow himself a small smile with a 1-2 finish like this, including the pole position, though it appears fast lap will go to Jean Alesi, so the Williams team will be denied that, at least.
What I can't believe, and I'm sure you haven't even mentioned it, which really disturbs me, I did do the Argentine Grand Prix for Frank Williams in 1971. I won't go into what happened. It was a non-championship race, and we were actually lying second in the SDP March, or in the March Formula One car, when the camshaft broke. But of course, that was on the old circuit, the one we'd raced on in the sports car race just 2 weeks previously. But not the same Frank Williams team that's out there today, just a little shadow of its present self, I must admit. Oh, look here, we have a moment here. Whoa! I hope, oh,
Johnny Herbert in the Sauber off and on.
Having a lurid moment with Eddie Irvine behind him, and Eddie, I think, could have backed off a little bit more there, but of course he has Verstappen probably less than 2 seconds behind him, and he didn't want to lose any time with that.
Absolutely. Final lap for Damon Hill, holder of the highest winning percentage among active Formula One drivers, higher even than Michael Schumacher, with whom he is so often compared in a negative way. I'd say this for Damon Hill: when the victory has been there for the taking, he has taken it. Once again, he has driven extremely well this year. Held position behind his teammate. Some folks cited it as a lack of aggression in Melbourne. Others called it a great bit of conservative driving on Damon's part. Nevertheless, he came away with the victory when Villeneuve's car faltered with an oil leak. And then he drove away to dominating victories last week in Brazil, at Sao Paulo, and this week in Argentina.
A wonderful feeling to sit in the cockpit at this situation, driving your way home. You're actually holding the steering wheel, and you're just gripping it, and you're just like, it's like kissing the car. You just think, come on, you beauty, you can do it. You just hold it there and just bring it home. Just pray that the car is going to run with you and for you.
That recalls the maestro Fangio as well, who used to speak to his cars.
I think everybody does. It's just that nobody likes to let it be known that we're all a bit soft at heart.
Why so many racing champions keep their old race cars. Fist in the air, down to the start-finish stripe comes Damon Hill to claim his 3rd victory, undefeated in 1996, and runaway leader for the World Driving Championship with a perfect score of 30 points. His 3rd consecutive win, his 2nd in a row here in Argentina.
Followed by Villeneuve and Alesi right behind him, but not close enough. Alesi will be very, very happy with that result. I'm sure Villeneuve would, probably a little disappointed he couldn't run with Hill. I'm sure there's very good reason for it, but boy, Alesi was right there.
The marshals out at the corners for the traditional waving of the flags to congratulate the finishers. We'll be back to wrap things up from Buenos Aires in just a moment. Back in Brazil, Damon Hill waves to the crowd as he heads for Parc Fermé in the pit lane where the car will be inspected. He has picked up his 3rd straight victory. As you see the final finishers, Eddie Irvine pulling off. Moments ago, we saw the same thing happen to Jean Alesi, presumably out of gas. Alesi will have to hustle to the podium as he is the 3rd place finisher. Eddie Irvine can take his time.
That's very nicely put, Bob.
There you see the Williams teammates, Hill and Villeneuve. But another great learning experience for Villeneuve on this strange racetrack. Dialed himself in, took third on the grid, drove a measured race, finished second. Very much a championship contender in 1996, unless some team can come to terms with Williams and make themselves more competitive. Damon Hill gets a hug from wife Georgie. There you see the constructors' points. We won't have enough time to give them to you in our own script, so you see them there. Damon Hill over Jacques Villeneuve. Jean Alesi finishes third. Rubens Barrichello fourth. Eddie Irvine fifth. Jos Verstappen picks up the final points-paying position, followed by David Coulthard, Olivier Panis, Johnny Herbert, and Andrea Montermini, the final classified finisher. I'm Bob Varsha for Derek Bell. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you in 3 weeks from the Nürburgring for the Grand Prix of Europe. Coming up next, the Dodge Vintage Festival from Lime Rock Park. So long, everyone.